Hello and welcome back to this AWS course. We're currently in section 2 and we've been using the CDK a bit now, and in this lesson we're going to see how to reset it. In other words, put the system back into the state it was before we ever did a CDK Bootstrap in the first place. Now let me show you the problem. If you do a CDK Bootstrap, what will happen is it will create a stack. Let me just go and show you. If I go to CloudFormation, we can see that after a CDK Bootstrap has taken place, it creates this stack CDKToolkit. Now you would be forgiven for thinking that if you delete that Bootstrap stack, then everything has gone away and you can now do a Bootstrap again. But in fact that isn't the case, so let me show you what actually happens. If I bring up Visual Studio, so I'll delete the stack with this command here. Now note, I could have gone into the management console and just as easily I could have clicked on this and done delete stack. They're exactly the same. But now let me just refresh this and you'll see a delete is in progress. So this will take a few seconds. I'll just pause temporarily. Okay, you can see the stack is now completely gone. So let's get back to Visual Studio Code and now let's try and create a brand new CDK Bootstrap. So I'll issue the CDK Bootstrap command here, and you'll see very quickly it runs into trouble here. And the reason is that it's trying to create a bucket, and it says there's already a bucket with the ID that I want to use. It already exists. So let's go and have a quick look at what's going on here. If we go to the S3 management console, indeed, we can see there is a bucket here, and the bottom line is that we can't do another CDK Bootstrap until this is deleted. So in order to delete this is a little bit more problematic than you might think. The normal code for this, to delete a bucket, I've actually got it written in a script. Let me just show you. Here is the way you would normally delete a bucket. You would first say I want to delete the content of the bucket. You'd say remove everything in this bucket recursively, and then you would say delete the bucket and supply the bucket name. Now that would ordinarily work, but there's a bit of a wrinkle, and that is if we look inside this bucket and switch show versions on, we can see that there are lots of different versions. In other words, CDK uses bucket versioning. And because this bucket is versioned, those little commands, these two commands here, won't work. So you have to do a bit more jiggery pokery. So this script does the full Monty. It goes ahead, it goes off, it finds every bucket whose name begins with CDK. It then iterates through each of the buckets and it looks at the versioning status. And if the versioning is switched on, then it goes through and iterates through each version and deletes the versions one at a time. And if it's not versioned, then it just does the usual delete everything in the bucket. So once all of that is complete, then it goes off and deletes the bucket. So let me show you this running. I'll bring my terminal back full screen. All I need to do, my current directory is in the mono repo, and this is in the scripts directory. So I just enter the command /scripts/bootstrap delete buckets.sh, and we can see it runs through the script. Let me just, and it's iterated through all of the versions we saw in the bucket, and then it deletes the bucket and everything is now gone. So if I go back to this page here and look at buckets and refresh, we can see that the bucket is deleted. Okay, so we've got rid of the bucket and now we should be able to do our bootstrap. So let's return back to the terminal and we'll issue this CDK Bootstrap for another time. Here we are, CDK Bootstrap. And this time it'll work fine. In fact, it takes a few minutes, so I will again pause the video. Okay, so that's now completed. And if we come back over here and we go to our CloudFormation page, we can see we're back in business with this stack here. If we go to resources, we can see that it has a bucket, and this bucket content is currently empty because there haven't been any CDK operations as yet, but every time you do a CDK operation, stuff goes in this bucket and it gets versioned. Okay, so that's the principle. Now I've packaged all this up into just a couple of commands, so let me just show you. Clear this terminal. In fact, I can get rid of it now. So the first thing I've done is I've created a bootstrap up script that simply issues the bootstrap command, and a bootstrap down script that deletes the stack and then runs this delete bucket script that we saw running. And then these are both referred to in the scripts package.json. There's a bootstrap up and a bootstrap down that just runs these scripts. And then in the master package.json, I refer to this bootstrap up and bootstrap down here. So I say bootstrap up is going to change directory to the scripts folder and then runs bootstrap up in there, and ditto with the down. So if I now want to run these commands, I have an alias set up, prun, so I just say prun bootstrap down like this, and it runs the bootstrap down and deletes the bucket. As we can see, there's nothing in the bucket, so there are no version deletions. And equally, I can say bootstrap up, and this will just go off and do the bootstrap again. Okay, so the only final thing to say is, if we go back to here, is that this is purely really something that affects developers. In a production environment, you would probably never delete the bootstrap stack. You would just do a CDK bootstrap, and then you would do all your production deployments using the CDK. But as developers, there's a couple of reasons we would want to do this. One is we want to go right back to the beginning to test from a clean sheet of paper. And the other is that as the bootstrap progresses, it does create lots of buckets, and it does actually create containers as well. And eventually, if you go on for long enough, you'll end up with very large containers and buckets, and you might start incurring AWS charges. So it's really nice just to be able to clear everything down and take your AWS account and remove everything in it. And so that's certainly what's driven me to get this working. So I hope you will find that useful, and I will see you in the next lesson.